The case against the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson may have just taken a bizarre turn. And that is because federal authorities say someone may have tried to get Luigi Mangione out of jail. According to a new criminal complaint, a man allegedly walked into a Brooklyn federal jail, claimed he was an FBI agent, and said he had paperwork signed by a judge to release an inmate. Now, based on certain circumstances, it is believed to be Mangione. How did he think that this would work if the allegations are true? Was he close to actually pulling this off? And what does it mean for Mangione's case? We're going to break it all down with a prison consultant who knows the system inside and out. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The targeted execution-style alleged murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a Midtown Manhattan street was already a shocking crime. One of the most shocking crimes we've covered in recent memory. And the accused killer, Luigi Mangione, was captured 5 days later, has been locked up ever since, awaiting two massive trials, a state trial, a federal trial. But now, we have just learned of what appears to be yet another bizarre moment in this saga. Now, we can't say for sure it's connected to Mangione, but when you connect some of the dots, I think it might be a fair assumption. So federal authorities are now claiming that a man from Minnesota walked right up to the federal jail in Brooklyn last night where Mangione is being housed and tried to pose as an FBI agent. He apparently claimed he had a judge's order to release a specific inmate, and law enforcement, if you're reading between the lines, may be saying that that inmate was Mangione. Now, when guards asked for his credentials, he apparently showed a Minnesota driver's license. In his bag that was searched by authorities, not official paperwork, but a barbecue fork and what looked like a pizza cutter. Now, if all of this is true, how on earth did he think that this would work? What does that say about the security? I mean, did he get close? Really? What was the plan here? And by the way, what happens next for Mangione? I mean, is he due back in court tomorrow? We're going to break down this stunning new criminal complaint line by line. We're also going to be talking with prison consultant Justin Paperny, who knows this system inside and out, about how an attempt like this can even happen. But for viewers just joining us, really very quick recap of the case at the heart of all this. So Luigi Mangione is accused of the point-blank fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside of a Midtown Manhattan hotel in December of 2024. And authorities allege it was a meticulously planned, targeted attack. Mangione was arrested days later in Pennsylvania. He's been held without bail ever since. And remember, he is facing not one, but two major trials, one in state court for murder and another in federal court in the Southern District of New York, where prosecutors are seeking the death penalty, or trying to. It is a high-stakes, high-profile case that we have been following very, very closely. And that is what makes this new development just so stunning. Because while Mangione sits in the Federal Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, awaiting his next court date scheduled for tomorrow, authorities say someone may have tried an almost unbelievably bold scheme to get him out. Now, to be very clear, the federal complaint that we're about to discuss does not actually name Luigi Mangione. The inmate is only referred to as a specific inmate in custody. However, a law enforcement source directly involved in the case has confirmed to multiple news outlets that the inmate in question was indeed Luigi Mangione. Let's talk about it. All right, joining us to break all of this down, prison consultant, friend of the show, Justin Paperny. Justin, thank you so much for coming on. It's breaking news. Got you on so quickly. Have you heard of something like this before? I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie, but I do wonder, how easy is it for somebody to maybe pose as an agent, as a member of law enforcement, say the right things, get somebody out of jail?
Well, the first part is right. This is exactly like what we would see sensationalized on television. It was successful once in the movie Catch Me If You Can, where Leonardo played Frank Abagnale as a pilot and he flew the plane. That was a very long time ago. But people see something on television, like someone breaks into a prison or they walk in, they give a dramatic speech and they're going to release the person. They're just delusional. And I think when someone is in crisis and they're spiraling, they're looking for meaning. And if they're a fan of someone, they think they're a hero. So it's very easy to play the part and put on the costume. But when you have a prison that is trained for deception and these sorts of things, knowing there is a protocol to release someone, in about 17 seconds, they realize we're dealing with someone who isn't stable. And they did the right thing by finding out if he had any weapons. He did, and they arrested him. So it's easy to dress the part, nearly impossible to execute it.
Can you elaborate on that, what the protocol is in place? If there was to be a release that wasn't in the news, right? There wasn't an appeal or a habeas motion where the conviction was overturned. They have to be immediately released. If there was some other reason for an agent to go in there and take somebody out pursuant to a court order, how much advance notice does a jail, a prison get? What is the protocol as far as you know?
So there's a chance the prison can find out the day before. That's happened to people in our community. A case manager calls you in and said, you're going out tomorrow, you're getting released, you're getting transferred. But there is a process in place that could take weeks or even months. A writ goes to a judge, the judge signs it, it goes to the marshals, they coordinate with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the Bureau of Prisons notifies the warden, there's paperwork along the way, there's checks and balances. Even when I surrendered to a minimum security camp a long time ago, I had 9 separate people ask me 9 times my name, my Bureau of Prisons number, and I was going to a camp. So one thing they have is a process that they follow, and it's the reason they knew in about 6 seconds this wasn't legitimate, and they did the right thing by making sure he did not cause harm to anyone, including himself.
Is there a possibility he could have fooled them? Maybe not him specifically, but I have to be completely honest about this. Again, the court paperwork doesn't officially say that he was trying to release Mangione, but based on some of the other circumstances, let's assume that for a moment. Given the high-profile nature of this case, given the fact that there are a lot of people who have support for Mangione, are in his camp, there's a ton of money being raised, I gotta say I'm not surprised that this happened. I actually wonder if this is gonna be the last time we see something like this. But could there have been a set of circumstances where if somebody had the right documentation, said the right things, was a really good, con artist, and let's be clear, this individual is innocent until proven guilty. Is the system foolproof? Could there have been a scenario where he could have been busted out, and then what?
I don't think there's any scenario unless it was an inside job, unless this person is coordinating with someone who works inside of the institution to enable and make it happen. And again, that's right out of television as well. So given the problems at MDC over the years, starting with Epstein and the accusations these guards weren't properly doing their job, it's heightened alert times a million inside of that prison, especially when you have so many high-profile prisoners coming in and out of there. So in no world would he have been successful. And sometimes, like, when this person is clearly going through some crisis, if true, and sometimes when going through crisis, the last thing you want to do is move like slowly and deliberately to improve your life. You make really quick, short-sighted action. So 10 or 30 minutes of his life could lead to a very lengthy federal prison sentence. I wish he thought it through, and if true, I hope he gets help that he desperately needs, because had he discussed this with anyone rational, they'd have said, dude, stop immediately, please. You will never be successful.
The trial hasn't even started yet. Does this give you concern about what we can expect moving forward as this case advances, what the security might be, whether it's at a jail, whether it's at a prison, whether it's at a courthouse? Never seen a case like this before in my life. I really
it's a little bit. Yeah, it's a little like the Batman. Some people are trying to break out the Joker, with all due respect. I mean, it is not normal. And what happens is the longer he's in custody, people who view him as a hero and they want to help him, they view him, this is unfair, this is unjust, he should be free, he should have a bracelet on, we've raised enough money for bond, he should be in the community, other people accused of similar crimes are. So the longer that narrative hardens, the more people become emboldened to try to help him. So you can expect when the trial begins for there to be hundreds, if not thousands of people outside the courthouse. And the closer we get to some verdict, the worse it's only going to get. Now, in federal cases, there will not be cameras inside of the courtroom. I wish there were, because you could see full transparency in what's said on both sides. And when you can't hear it, you hear it from other people. And then that narrative will harden and move on in time. So expect it to build the closer to the trial.
I want to go through this criminal complaint line by line, because I think it's really important. So this is the document where the agent lays out exactly what he claims happened. It is a wild read, but the government story starts with a specific time and a specific place. Quote, on or about January 28th, 2026, at approximately 1850 hours, the defendant Mark Anderson approached the intake area inside the MDC and claimed to uniformed members of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP, that he was an FBI agent in possession of paperwork signed by a judge authorizing the release of a specific inmate who was in custody at the MDC. Okay, so 6:50 p.m. last night, the intake area, the front door of the jail, he walks up, basically says, I'm an FBI agent. Incredible. Now, of course, the guards, they ask for proof. And here's what the complaint says. When asked to provide federal credentials, the defendant Mark Anderson displayed his Minnesota driver's license to the BOP officers and then claimed to be in possession of weapons, okay? Anderson also displayed and threw at the BOP officers numerous documents. I have reviewed those papers, and they appear to be related to filing claims against the United States Department of Justice. Justin, I gotta say, there's a part of it where he goes in with this level of authority, but he had nothing. I mean, if the allegations are true, nothing to back it up, and shows kind of that erratic behavior. It was nothing even about, it seems, about that inmate.
Yeah, to me, it shows that he spent about 15 seconds planning this. An ID grabs, I think I read it was like a barbecue pitchfork or something akin to that.
Let me get that. Let me throw that. Quote, Mark Anderson was detained by members of the BOP, and a backpack he possessed was searched to reveal a large barbecue-type fork and a round steel blade. Tell me, this kind of pizza cutter, these weapons. What do you think? What was the plan?
There was no plan. I think he's not thinking clearly. A lot of television where you presume because you have the costume on and you have an ID and you have a letter from a judge, they're going to release you. It's like, I'd love to go to the bank this afternoon and say a judge or someone signed off that my mortgage is paid, wipe it clean. They'd laugh me out of the bank or arrest me. He just didn't think it through. And to think that you could, walk in with weapons like that in a letter, it's kind of like thinking you can rob, Fort Knox with a plastic sword. There was just no thinking through it. And now what they'll do, what a prosecutor will do, they will go through every alleged offense. So it's like doctoring documents, a weapon. And before you know it, it could be a long time in prison. And if guilty and there are health issues, I pray he gets treatment he needs. But what we have seen in the past is, and we've covered this before, we've covered it where a guard may sleep with an inmate, then it happens again and again. We don't want to see that copycat where it emboldens a person to say, this is where he did it wrong. I'm going to learn from his mistakes and I'm going to correct what he did wrong and I'm going to do it right and get him out of here. The first tends to lead to another. And that's something that the authorities need to look out for and be alert.
Now, we have learned from new reporting that there's a hearing expected tomorrow in Mangione's federal case. We believe the judge is expected to rule soon on whether it's going to be a death penalty case. The Manhattan DA's office has asked the judge to set a July 1st trial date. They say they're ready. Jury selection in the federal case already scheduled for September 8th, although the U.S. Attorney's Office has said that it expects the state case to proceed first. How complicated do you expect this to be in terms of his multiple trials, perhaps multiple phases? What's your take on it?
My take is that, of course, it's very complicated. And if they pursue the death penalty, it's because they're 100% convinced they're going to get a conviction for that. And it aligns with the messaging right now, I think, of this administration of holding people committing violent crimes to justice. And in this instance, they believe by pushing it that it could require the death penalty. So if they're pushing for it, they think they are going to be successful. And again, that will upset people for myriad reasons. We'll see. But it's an incredibly complex case, and it continues to get more attention over time. And to your point earlier, as trial approaches, it's going to be very popular. A lot of attention.
Do you think events like this will influence that decision or influence in the way, maybe even the way the trials are held, maybe the security protocols? I'd have to imagine so, even the way that he's transported back and forth. Mm-hmm. But also, do you think it's going to affect the decision making in this case, in your experience?
Zero, nothing. I think the U.S. Attorney's Office has an end in mind. I think they want him convicted. They want him sent. They want him to endure they want death. And they've said it from the beginning. So I don't think anything gets in the way of their end game, seeing him executed.
And real quick, the security put in place now for every hearing, for the trial. Can you imagine what the crowd is going to look like on day one of either jury selection or opening statements in a trial? What that scene is going to look like outside the courthouse, inside the courthouse? Are you aware of any additional protocols, any additional resources that would be needed for something like this?
I've seen it. I've been to 1,500 sentencings in my career to support people of the white-collar advice community facing a sentencing hearing primarily for a white-collar crime. But in advance of that, an MS-13 gang member, someone sentenced, even if they've been in custody this entire time, usually at a white-collar crime sentencing, there may be no marshal in the room, or one if the judge wants to take that person into custody. But I've just been to sentencing hearings with violent crimes, 8 or 9 marshals, all on total lockdown, all high alert, people going through metal detectors before they get into the prison. So you can absolutely expect that throughout the entire circus that will be this trial. There is no doubt.
Justin Paperny, thank you so much for jumping on. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock. We got Sidebar episodes up there too. And if you want to follow me, X, Instagram, or check out my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody. New court filings are pulling Taylor Swift directly into the Blake Lively-Justin Baldoni legal war, revealing private texts that, if true, show Swift maybe siding with Lively, maybe then not, reacting behind the scenes as the controversy was about to explode. And I will tell you, those texts are just part of a much larger evidentiary dump, including witness testimony, private reactions, all from the people at the center of this fight. And we're going to break it all down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so we are now seeing exactly what Taylor Swift is alleged to have texted Blake Lively about Justin Baldoni in the middle of this multi-million-dollar legal fight. It's been a minute since we've covered this, but I mean, how can we not? The messages revealed in new court filings are just brutal. Messages that, if authentic, if true, suggest, I think the argument would be, Swift wasn't just a bystander in this Hollywood legal fight. The filings lay out just a blunt behind-the-scenes exchange that reads like Swift and Lively reacting in real time just as the story was about to explode. This is a massive new filing in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni lawsuit that has just been unsealed, and it contains dozens and dozens of exhibits, hundreds of pages of what the filing presents as private text messages, witness testimony, behind-the-scenes notes. It kind of pulls back the curtain on one of Hollywood's nastiest and ugliest fights that we've seen in quite some time. And for those of you who need a quick refresher, I think I do, I haven't done this in a while. This is the battle, remember, over the film. It ends with us. Blake Lively starred in it. Justin Baldoni directed it. He was a co-star. And Lively sued Baldoni and his production company, Wayfarer Studios, alleging a toxic and sexually harassing environment on set. Baldoni, as we know, countersued for hundreds of millions of dollars, claiming that it was Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, who ran a smear campaign against him, tried to take over the movie. By the way, that countersuit was later dismissed after Baldoni decided not to file any amended claims against Lively, although Baldoni can still appeal that decision. But nonetheless, it has been a very, very messy he said, she said drama for now over a year. But I will tell you, this new filing, it aims to move past the speculation, the rumors, the innuendos. It is filled with what are seemingly presented as their own words captured in real time as all of this was going on. So first off, it includes what are presented as texts between Blake Lively and her one-time good friend Taylor Swift that appear to show Swift taking Lively's side and maybe even discussing strategy. And if you've been wondering, how involved was Taylor really? These pages are why that question just got a whole lot louder. And the filing also includes what are described as Justin Baldoni's private texts to friends like Rainn Wilson, the actor, where he allegedly described an ambush meeting with Lively and Ryan Reynolds that left him, quote, emotionally paralyzed. And it contains a witness deposition where it's alleged that Ryan Reynolds had yelled at Baldoni during a meeting that went on for over 5 hours. There is so much more to get into here, and we're going to just take you through all of it page by page, as most of it as we possibly can. I mean, we can't make a 3-hour sidebar here, but first of all, just got to set the stage a little bit. So the story starts with what was supposed to be a huge hit. 2023, the film adaptation of Colleen Hoover's massive bestseller, It Ends With Us, goes into production. Justin Baldoni's the director, he's the star, Blake Lively co-star, the film's leading lady. But according to the lawsuits, according to the legal filings, almost from the beginning there was tension. Lively's suit alleges that Baldoni created a hostile environment, making inappropriate comments, crossing professional boundaries. She claims that when she raised concerns, the response was retaliation. Baldoni's side tells a completely different story because in his now dismissed countersuit, he claimed that Lively was a diva who tried to hijack creative control, rewriting scripts, changing the wardrobe, making unreasonable demands. He alleges that when he pushed back, Lively, along with her husband Ryan Reynolds, launched a coordinated smear campaign against him to damage his reputation and essentially force him off his own project. And this war eventually went from behind the scenes to center stage because in late 2024, A New York Times article detailed allegations of a retaliatory campaign against Lively, which she said was orchestrated by Baldoni's team. And that article became a central piece of this legal battle. And then came the lawsuits, right? So Lively sued for harassment and a hostile work environment. Baldoni countersued for defamation, extortion, seeking $400 million. That countersuit, as I mentioned, was later dismissed after he reportedly chose not to amend his claims, though he retains the right to appeal. And what remained was Lively's original suit, which, by the way, is heading towards trial. And that's where we were, right? This bitter stalemate with dueling narratives and all that until now. Because what has just happened? This new unsealed filing isn't just legal arguments. It is what each side will be claiming is the raw contemporaneous evidence, the texts, the emails, the private reactions as this feud was unfolding in real time. So what is the actual lawsuit moving forward? What is at stake right now? Well, Blake Lively's original lawsuit is still active. It's headed for trial. And this week, a judge unsealed a massive trove of documents that both sides had filed under seal. And this new unsealed filing gives us the specific granular details that Lively's legal team is using to build their case and that Baldoni's team is trying to dismantle. And it's important to note that this evidence itself was fought over. Baldoni's talent agency, WME, William Morris Endeavor, had filed a motion seeking to keep all these very texts sealed. No one would see it, arguing they were private, not legally relevant. Judge seemed to disagree, allowed them to be unsealed. Now the world is seeing it. And there is already pushback on the framing, by the way. A source close to Lively disputes Baldoni's narrative about the timeline of events. The source claims the messages in question, including those about the ambush meeting, only came after Lively had outlined serious onset issues and after more than a dozen safety protections had already been agreed to in writing. So Lively allegedly responds that they show an exchange dated December 5th, 2024. And according to the filing, it seems that Swift sent Lively a screenshot of a news article about Baldoni with this message, quote, "I think this B knows something is coming because he's gotten out his tiny violin." Now Lively allegedly responds, "He's not. He just has a team. Yeah, her, and his publicist Jennifer Abel, and the comms people at his studio." Now Swift's apparent next message, according to the filing, is he needs to be beaten by his own words. Lively allegedly replies, "Everyone weighs in before he responds to a text, writes an email, or trims his hair. It's wild, everyone participates." And then the filing seems to show Lively's apparent text that reads, "Yeah, I actually think it's important he's honored. And to all the people honoring him and not taking a moment to question, no one talks to him, no one will say his name, no one follows him, yet they all are close with each other. Maybe it was with him. Nah, it was the women because they were flowers. That's how you know." Swift is quoted as responding, "Is everything still on track?" Lively's alleged reply, "Oh yes, a week later though, but worth the wait." And Swift apparently responds, "Okay, that's perfect. His own words, that's going to be powerful." Lively apparently responds, "That's what's wild about this entire thing. Everything is in their own words." And Swift apparently responds, "It's the only way to beat liars and hypocrites." Now, the conversation, as presented in the filing, continues with Lively apparently texting, "Can you imagine feeling as confident as these predators that you're going to always get away with it? Him accepting an award as an ally for women, and Scooter going about the world with his head held high," meaning seemingly Scooter Braun. Swift seemingly replies, "It's like a horror film no one knows is taking place." And Lively's final message in this sequence appears to be, "Oh, but they will. It's the only thing that can come of this. The good that protects other women from this happening to them. Meanwhile, I walk around feeling death sentence guilty and apologetic for being sarcastic and liking a theme party." By the way, before we finish with Taylor Swift, it's just another message I have to talk about. There's these apparent messages between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively. You fast forward to December of 2024 when everything was happening. So there's this message from Blake Lively where she goes, "Hey, just checking in. I have no reason to ask, but I don't know. I've been feeling like I should. Is everything okay?" And Taylor responds, I mean, there's a longer message, but Taylor then responds, "No, you're not wrong, but it's also not a big deal. I think I'm just exhausted in every avenue of my life, and in recent months have been feeling a little bit of a shift in the way you talk to me. Yes, there's been a lot of the Justin stuff, but I've been through things like this before, and I know how all-consuming it is. It's more like, and I feel really bad saying anything about this because your texts have been so nice in their intent, but your last few I felt like I was reading a mass corporate email sent to 200 employees. You said the word we like 18 times, and it feels awful to be in any way critical of any way you process what you've been going through, but I just kind of miss my funny, dark, normal speaking friend who talks to me as herself, not like a plural unit. When it's group I'm hearing from, I feel distance from you even more than we are geographically. And it appears that Blake Lively responds, "Dear valued customer, thank you for your feedback. We at headquarters are reviewing your concerns and we'll get back to you in a timely manner." Now, I want to look at a completely different narrative that was presented in the filing. And this comes from a document titled Notes from Call with Jamie and Tara. So it's dated July 25th, 2024. And Jamie Heath is apparently Justin Baldoni's producing partner, co-founder of Wayfarer Studios. And these notes, allegedly summarizing their perspective, kind of lay out a series of grievances against Blake Lively. So the notes kind of describe the project's origin, saying that Justin Baldoni acquired the rights to Colleen Hoover's novel and spent years developing it. They state, 2.5 years ago, partnered with Sony to make the movie, cast Blake Lively, quickly learned that she is every bit of a superstar, and that comes with superstardom. And the notes then list alleged issues regarding wardrobe. They claim, quote, and this is from the docs, Blake started spending on her own and changed the whole wardrobe, no regard as to how this affected production. On script changes, the notes allege, every page she had her fingerprint on. And then the document describes this major turning point, a list of apparent demands that Lively allegedly sent to return to set after an industry strike. And it quotes several conditions, including, quote, Justin Baldoni shall not talk about his porn addiction with Blake Lively. Wayfarer shall not enter BL's trailer in a state of undress. No one from Wayfarer shall not hug, touch in any way Blake Lively or her team. Must be closed set during rehearsal or filming of nudity. And by the way, Lively's side would say that's because of the harassment that she was receiving. Now, the notes go on to describe the infamous January 4th meeting at Lively's apartment. This was apparently a big issue. They allege, quote, Ryan chastised him for being dramatic. It's not about you, it's about her. This goes on for an hour. Ryan chastised Jamie and Justin again. Justin, why can't you be more like your partner? Now, a huge part of this evidence revolves around one pivotal event, this marathon meeting, this apparent marathon meeting at Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' New York apartment on January 4th, 2024. According to the filing, this happened the day before the film was set to resume shooting after this industry strike, and multiple people from the production were there, allegedly under the impression that it was a standard return-to-work meeting. But what unfolded, as described in these documents, was a lengthy confrontation. The filing contains sworn witness testimony about this meeting from Andrea Gianetti, a producer on the film, and in her video deposition, she seemingly describes what she walked into. Was Ryan Reynolds yelling at Justin? Answer, it was a very long meeting, and there were times, yes, his voice was raised. Did you feel bad for Justin? Yes, I think it went over 5 hours, and he was visibly frozen. And then she was asked about the reaction of veteran producer Todd Black, who was also there. Question, did he tell you it was one of the harshest meetings he had ever been to in his entire career? Answer, he did. It was the fact that we were not prepared in the length of the meeting and that there was, I don't even think there was a break. We never experienced that. And then the filing presents alleged private messages from Ryan Reynolds that show or appear to show the intense personal feelings that were involved here. So you have a series of texts that were dated May 17, 2024, where Reynolds is allegedly messaging Matt and Lucy Damon to ask for their support for Lively's cut of the film. And in one message, Reynolds allegedly describes Baldoni as, quote, a malignantly vain, sociopathic, faux feminist with almost no sense of boundaries or shame. I cannot believe he hasn't gone to jail. In another alleged text from the same day sent to Ben Affleck, Lively reportedly describes Baldoni as a, quote, chaotic clown director, says there were, quote, wild HR issues on set, and in a separate alleged communication that was revealed by TMZ, Reynolds is quoted as referring to Baldoni as a bleeping terrorist. And then we get the alleged private reaction from Justin Baldoni himself, in his own words. So the filing includes what are presented as text messages that Baldoni sent to a group chat with friends, including actor Rainn Wilson. This was the day after that same January 4th meeting. And the texts are, by the way, timestamped January 5th, 2024 at 6:20 p.m., where Baldoni allegedly writes, quote, sorry for not giving an update. Last night was one of the hardest nights of my life. The only way to describe it was an ambush. I had no words. I couldn't formulate sentences. He goes on to describe the meeting, alleging Ryan was talking to me like a 5-year-old and scolding me. The word creepy and abuse were used in reference to me and my behavior. I was then given the words of what to say and had to apologize, which I was unable to do. I was in shock and basically went into feeling like a 7-year-old again. And then he details the emotional aftermath. Quote, I was emotionally paralyzed, which is something I haven't experienced in years. I spoke to my therapist for an hour and she tried to get me out of the haze as I literally could not get myself off the couch. I don't know how I will make it through. And in the messages, Baldoni allegedly expresses a desire to fight back, but says he felt trapped. My brain was struggling because what I wanted to say and do was run and blow this whole movie up because I feel this was so unjust, and yet the only path forward was to acknowledge her and Ryan's feelings and apologize and take the wrath of an angry husband. Yeah, I couldn't even do that correctly. And he also includes a spiritual struggle, allegedly writing, I prayed and prayed and prayed for the words and they didn't come, so I felt abandoned by God in that moment. And the filing apparently shows the group's responses, with Rainn Wilson's alleged reply is, oh my God, I can't believe it. You were set up and ambushed and personally attacked. I'm stunned. I completely relate to you being stunned like a deer in the headlights. Now another member, apparently Travis Van Winkle, allegedly responds, love you two so much. You're both freaking warriors. So with all of this now public, Blake Lively's legal team was first to issue a statement, and they focused on the evidence of alleged harassment. You had attorney Sigrid McCauley said that the unsealed documents contain never-before-seen testimony, messages, and evidence from numerous eyewitnesses backing Lively's claims. The statement emphasized that the concerns of Miss Lively and others were documented in real time and that Wayfarer understood them as sexual harassment concerns. Justin Baldoni's side has not issued a formal new statement in a direct response to this unsealing, at least at the time of this recording. However, their position has been laid out in the very documents that we've been reviewing, right? Their narrative, as shown, maintains that Lively's allegations were part of a power grab, that the meeting was an ambush. Legally, their previously stated defense denies all allegations of harassment, claims that Lively was the one who weaponized false claims. And Taylor Swift's team has consistently attempted to distance her from all of this. And prior to this unsealing, her spokesperson said that Taylor Swift never set foot on the set of this movie, was not involved in any casting or creative decisions, and did not even see It Ends With Us until weeks after its public release. And the statement characterized attempts to involve her as just tabloid clickbait. There has been no new comment from her camp on these specific texts, at least at the time of this recording. But Ryan Reynolds has not publicly commented on the witness testimony alleging that he yelled at Baldoni. We don't have a statement at this time either. But the core takeaway from the responses is just a clear divide. You have one side who says the evidence proves a pattern of harassment and cover-up. The other side, through its filed documents, says it proves coercion, a smear campaign. And the unsealing has given each side's narrative new fuel, but no one has backed down. And for what's at stake, I mean, Lively's original, what was it, $160 million lawsuit? The active case, it's moving toward trial. There is a hearing scheduled for January 22nd, and the trial itself is currently set to begin on May 18th. Though I will tell you, as with many high-profile cases, that could shift, maybe even a settlement. We'll see. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow us, by the way, on NBC's Peacock. We have episodes up there. If you want to follow me, check me out on X, Instagram. I got my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live. Hope you can check that out as well. Until next time, I'm Jesse Weber. In the last few weeks, since a bombshell sexual harassment and retaliation lawsuit was filed against Will Smith by a professional violinist, the actor and musician has been so quiet. Well, sorta. He's been posting a lot about his life, but has remained very tight-lipped about the allegations that he now faces. Although I will tell you, a court docket may have just given us a clue as to what's going on. Let's get into it. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you're in the content creation game, if you're putting things out on social media, have you ever wondered how we're able to get so many of our clips out there so quickly on all these stories? We use something called Opus Clip. I'm giving you a secret. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it so easy to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip generates B-roll, it reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes you will have perfectly edited clips ready to go. For TikTok, Shorts, Reels, Opus Clip is your one-stop shop. And having a tool like Opus Clip means that our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. This is the most powerful tool there is to share ideas and edit like a pro. So go to opus.pro/sidebar to get a free week and then 50% off. So I wanted to come back to this major lawsuit that we talked about a few weeks ago, the lawsuit against actor and rapper Will Smith. And I'm going to tell you the latest that we can see from our own findings, and then I'm going to be bringing on a celebrity attorney to get his take on what Will Smith is currently doing. Is there anything he should not be doing, should be doing? And also about the allegations in the complaint. But first, I got to talk about what Smith has been up to. So after we talked about this, after we talked about the complaint was first filed, and again, we're going to get into it, after the 57-year-old was sued by a professional violinist who appeared on Smith's tour in this bombshell sexual harassment and retaliation lawsuit, he hasn't really laid low. I mean, since the lawsuit was filed at the beginning of the month, if you go on Will Smith's Instagram, he's posting pictures and videos of trips that he took to Egypt and Botswana, appearing on Jimmy Fallon, wishing his former collaborator Jazzy Jeff a happy birthday. He's been heavily promoting his new National Geographic travel show, Pole to Pole, on Disney Plus and Hulu. But nothing about Brian King Joseph or the complaint that was filed in California State Court. Now, we did see something. So we went on the court docket, and there appear to be filings for proof of service indicating, right, that somebody was served with a complaint in this case. It looks like the corporate defendant, and we'll talk about who that is, maybe has been served. But as far as we could tell, I didn't see definitive confirmation that Will Smith, in his individual capacity as an individual defendant, had been served. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but just something to keep in mind about how this is progressing. Now, before I get into the merits of the case and how, Will Smith may fight it, I got to quickly lay out for you what we're talking about here. So Brian King Joseph, that is the plaintiff. This is the former contestant on season 13 of America's Got Talent, has filed a lawsuit against Will Smith, and also this corporate defendant, I mentioned it before, this management company associated with Smith, Trayball Studios Management.
Earlier this year, I was hired to be a performer on a major tour with somebody who is huge in the industry. So I was excited, proud of myself for getting the opportunity. Unfortunately, some things happened, and I can't get into the details of exactly what that was because it's already a legal issue right now. But the reason why I'm speaking out about this is because getting fired or getting blamed or shamed or threatened or anything like that simply for reporting sexual misconduct or safety threats at work is not okay.
Now, by the way, that was a video that he posted before this lawsuit was made public. And in that video, he didn't really get into who he was talking about or the legal claims. Again, this is before the filing was made public. But I will say, in an Instagram story that was posted after the lawsuit was filed, it read, "The support means a lot, you guys. Thank you," with prayer hands and heart emojis. So what does the lawsuit claim? Well, Joseph claims that around November 2024, he was contacted by Smith's people to come out to the actor's house for an introduction for potential recording opportunity. He goes there, he plays the violin for Smith, claims that Smith invited him to join him at a performance in San Diego, and then join his tour based on a true story, the 2025 tour. And he claims that he did, in fact, play at this San Diego show, which, by the way, he seemed to post a video of on Instagram. And this is of Smith coming on stage and seemingly introducing him.
Brian King Joseph,
and in the caption, it says, "Still pinching myself, 2 sold-out nights with the one and only Will Smith at the Observatory North Park," which, by the way, is in San Diego. This is back in December of 2024. Anyway, he claims that Smith wanted him to become more involved in the performances, that he was a valued member of the team, that he provided him more stage time, he invited him to play on Smith's tracks. And this is where Joseph claims that Smith said to him, quote, "You and I have such a special connection that I don't have with anyone else." And that apparently Smith made comments to that effect. Keep that in mind. So Joseph claims that in reliance, right, on going on this upcoming multi-month tour, he told Smith's people, look, I'm going to be buying all this music equipment, I'm going to be buying medication, other things, so he's shelling out a lot of money in reliance on coming on this tour. You fast forward to March of 2025. This is where Joseph claims that he joined Will Smith for the Las Vegas part of the tour, and that all the hotel rooms for him and the crew, they were booked by the defendants, and that no one besides the crew or hotel staff had access to his room. And this is when he claims that he believes someone came into his room on March 20th without his permission or without him knowing, and that hotel security say there were no signs of forced entry. The only people, according to him, who would have been in there were supposedly Smith's management team. Now, how does he know that somebody was in his room? The complaint reads, quote, "The evidence included a handwritten note addressed to plaintiff by name, which read, 'Brian, I'll be back no later 5:30, just us,' and then a drawn heart, Stone F. Among the remaining belongings were wipes, a beer bottle, a red backpack, a bottle of HIV medication with another individual's name, an earring, and hospital discharge paperwork belonging to a person unbeknownst to plaintiff. Plaintiff feared that an unknown individual would soon return to his room to engage in sexual acts with plaintiff." So Joseph claims that he immediately notified security and Smith's representatives about what had happened, that he, quote, "obtained photo documentation, changed rooms, called the non-emergency police line as well. And then after all that, this is the main argument of his complaint, he claims he was then blamed and that he was let go of this tour by the tour manager, Tim Miller. And it says, quote, "When plaintiff requested for further reasoning, Tim Miller, acting on behalf of defendants, redirected the blame for the termination onto plaintiff, saying, 'I don't know, you tell me, because everyone is telling me that what happened to you is a lie, nothing happened, and you made the whole thing up. So tell me, why did you lie and make this up?'" Now, in the complaint, Joseph alleges that he was shocked by this accusation and that he submitted evidence and a timeline, but, quote, "Defendant never made any effort to verify if the safety concern was true or not. One call to the hotel security would have been sufficient. Instead, defendant was intent on firing plaintiff because he reported the attempted sexual assault." Miller also indicated in person and via email that the tour was, quote, "moving in a different direction," which was part of the reason for plaintiff's termination. However, following plaintiff's report and termination, defendant hired another violinist to assume the same position on the tour. This hiring strongly suggested that defendant's stated reason for the termination was pretextual. And from there, the complaint reads, plaintiff further pleads on information and belief. The defendant's conduct goes beyond a mere failure to protect an employee's safety or a dispute over a claim. The facts strongly suggest that defendant Willard Carroll Smith II was deliberately grooming and priming Mr. Joseph for further sexual exploitation. The sequence of events, Smith's prior statements to plaintiff, and the circumstances of the hotel intrusion all point to a pattern of predatory behavior rather than an isolated incident. Defendant's actions caused plaintiff severe emotional distress, economic loss, reputational harm, and other damages. Plaintiff was also harmed as a result of the stress of losing his job. His health deteriorated, causing major physiological damage. Plaintiff suffered from PTSD and other mental illness as a result of the termination. And he is suing for multiple claims and causes of action here: retaliation under California law, retaliation under the labor code, retaliatory termination in violation of public policy. Basically here, that you're fired for reporting sexual harassment or workplace safety, that this is protected activity. There's also a Bain Act violation claim. This is a right to sue if you believe that your rights under the Constitution or California law have been interfered with, and that the defendants, this is what is claimed here, threatened, intimidated, and or coerced plaintiff by terminating him and falsely saying they were just moving in a different direction and replaced him. There is a Ralph Act violation claim. So this is where it protects people from violence or threats because of sex or sexual orientation. The claim here is the alleged intrusion into his room was a violent act or threat or intimidation of a sexual nature. Quote, "The circumstances, including the personal nature of the items left behind, the note addressed to plaintiff, and prior statements by Smith to plaintiff, such as 'you and I have such a special connection,' support the inference that plaintiff believed that the substantial motivating reason for the unlawful entry and related conduct was plaintiff's sex and or sexual orientation." There's also a claim for sexual harassment in violation of the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, which essentially protects employees from harassment or discrimination. It goes on to say that the government code makes it illegal for an employer or any other person because of sex to harass an employee. Further states, an employer may also be responsible for the acts of non-employees with respect to harassment of employees. And here, Joseph claims that he was employed by the defendants, that he was working out of California for preparing for the tour. So that's why California law violation and California jurisdiction, that someone broke into his room while on tour for the defendants, so course of employment, and that a note was left with the intent to engage in sex acts, a note left in his hotel room, a room that was assigned and arranged for by his employers, the defendants, and that they didn't do anything about it after Joseph reported it, and then he was fired for it. So throughout the complaint, Joseph discusses the harm that he suffered and the damages, and I went through that as well. Now, before I bring on Imran Ansari, a celebrity defense attorney, to talk about this, We actually sat down with Brian Joseph's attorney, Jonathan Delshad, in our previous episode of Sidebar. Here is part of what he had to say when I asked him to explain to me how this really connects back to Will Smith.
I don't want to get ahead of my skis here because, again, we haven't done discovery. We don't know what the facts are going to bear out. But again, the allegations here so far, I think the main allegations in our complaint are that it's some type of retaliation for reporting sexual harassment. So that's the main thrust of the arguments here. Again, what was written on the note that was allegedly written on the note. Everything I'm going to say is allegedly because it's all based off of the complaint, information, and belief at this point in time. You're spot on, by the way. That's the critical question in tying it back, meaning can we tie that back to Will Smith? But I think that there's a second option as well. That's just for the sexual harassment part of it. For the reporting, clearly it got back to Will Smith. I mean, that the reporting was reported to the tour manager, the right-hand man.
Is that Tim Miller, by the way? Is that Tim Miller?
Tim Miller.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, that's, I assume you're not asking about that, the retaliation for the reporting. I'm assuming you're asking about, did he know that was in there? And then the question becomes, why is he retaliating for reporting? And that's the critical question here.
I just want to go back to Will Smith for a second. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one comment that was listed in the complaint, and this is an overarching claim of sexual harassment. To be clear, is your client alleging that Will Smith ever sexually harassed him or propositioned him in any way?
I don't think that's not the claim that's being made in our complaint right now.
100%. But the comment that Will Smith allegedly made to him was put there for a reason. No, it was that comment that he allegedly made. And I believe there was even a reference to other unidentified comments that would give him rise to believe that whatever was left in his hotel room went to this claim of sexual harassment in a way.
I think that remains to be seen. I don't want to get ahead of my skis on that. Those are facts that are going to come out in discovery. And you're asking me to kind of hypothesize on what may have happened in this case. And again, as an attorney, our job is to advocate for our clients, to figure out the facts. At this point, the only side of the story I know is from what my client tells me.
Sure.
We want to do the discovery. We want to get into the weeds of this case. We want to figure out exactly what happened, who was involved in this. And, there's ways that we can figure that stuff out.
Now, I'm also going to tell you that Smith's attorney, Alan B. Grodsky, said at the time of this lawsuit being filed, quote, Mr. Joseph's allegations concerning my client are false, baseless, and reckless. They are categorically denied, and we will use all legal means available to address these claims and to ensure that the truth is brought to light. All right, so now I want to bring on acclaimed attorney, litigator to the stars, celebrity attorney Imran Ansari. He's represented L.A. Reid, 50 Cent, Harvey Weinstein, Russell Simmons. Thank you so much for coming on, Imran. It's been a minute. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jesse.
First, let me start with what Will Smith has been doing since the lawsuit was filed. I mentioned this at the beginning. He's been very active on social media. He's been promoting his new show. He's been traveling, posting photos with family. Very silent on the case. I'm not surprised by that. Hasn't made any mention of it. But for somebody who has been hit with a bombshell lawsuit like this, very public lawsuit like this, what do you make of him being so public and just living out his life?
Yeah, Jesse, listen, if he was my client and he was looking for advice of, how do I react to this on a PR aspect, on the public aspect, I'll probably tell him, like, listen, Will, you just want to be silent, go about your business, really put on a public image that this doesn't bother you because you have nothing to fear, right? That these are allegations that we are going to fight in court. We're going to defend against and possibly even knock out before it gets to discovery with a motion to dismiss. So that would be some of the advice I would be giving Will Smith at this point. And likely he got his advice from his attorney, and he's just going about business as usual when he has these other things happening in his career.
And do you think it's also because of the actual allegations he's facing? Somebody would look at the headlines and be like, oh my gosh, what did Will Smith do? But when you read through it, and I talked about it with the attorney who's representing the plaintiff in this case, it's not like necessarily Will Smith is accused of sexually assaulting or harassing the plaintiff and a quid pro quo scheme or anything like we've seen in recent history. I'll be straight up, I kind of questioned the attorney about it. I was like, show me the connective tissue back to Will Smith. And I gotta tell you, it didn't feel that clear. I mean, I get it. I understand it from a legal point of view. I understand it. But I think from an everyday observer, they might not be able to make that connection per se. And I wonder if that's the case. Maybe you see it, I see it the wrong way. But I also wonder if that might be dictating why Will Smith is just living out his life.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jesse. And, in preparation and coming on with you, I went back and I saw and I viewed your interview with that attorney. And I love that you used the connective tissue reference again, because I enjoyed that in your interview with him. And that's that, right? There's a connection. So they place Will Smith in this complaint. It's going to have that sort of shock value. It's going to be, something that they could put out there in terms of the publicity around the complaint. But ultimately in court, are you going to be able to prove any real wrongdoing by Will Smith? And importantly, Jesse, that connective tissue, are you going to be able to connect Will Smith and his alleged actions, and it's sort of thin here in that complaint, with any harm that this plaintiff actually experienced because of his allegations, right? So I don't think they're going to get there. This is my opinion, Jesse. I'm reading that complaint. I see the allegation against Will Smith as an individual, that comment that he made allegedly about having a connection. But I don't know, and I don't think, again, my opinion, that rises to the level of any liability. And in your interview with,
well, because the counterargument would be, it's Will Smith. Everybody's working for him. He's in charge of this tour. He allegedly made a comment that could be taken either way. They seem to be suggesting it's one of many comments. And Joseph gets fired, and he believes he wasn't fired really because of any reason other than he reported this alleged instance of sexual harassment, potential sexual assault, because they hired another violinist, and that Will Smith had to have known about this, that Will Smith was behind it, and they couple it with the, potentially odd comments that he made. That, again, is how they're connecting it.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't think that really is going to pass muster in court. It's early, it remains to be seen. But if you're going to file a complaint and allege individual liability like they have against Will Smith, they have that one comment, which arguably could have been completely innocuous, nothing sexually charged, just something like, all right, you're coming on this tour, you're going to be playing music, and I feel like I have a connection with you. He may have said that with other musicians in the past, but what is the liability against Will Smith? If you're going to have these comments and you allege and reference other comments, but you don't put that in the complaint, that raises question marks. But the connection, right? Like for individual liability here, I don't think that they're going to be able to show that. And when I listened to the interview with the attorney, he talked about upon information and belief, and of course, all these things that may be, beefed up during this discovery, but you have to pass go to get there. And I expect that we would see a motion to dismiss coming out from the defendant's camp against this particular complaint, especially against the allegations and bringing in Will Smith as an individual.
That's a good point, and I want to be clear about that. So you don't have to include everything in your initial complaint, but it has to meet a certain threshold for the lawsuit to keep on going, right? That was something that I seemed to try to be asking him, and he's like, we'll learn more about this during the course of discovery. Did you feel that the complaint was relatively bare bones at this point against either of the defendants?
Yeah, Jesse, I personally think so, right? Because, and you have all those causes of action under the California law, statutory law, regarding retaliation. And there's the allegation there, right? And of course, a pleading, complaint in the civil arena, you just have to make out the allegations enough to get into the courtroom. But there are certain aspects of claims like this that I think on this particular complaint, especially against Will Smith individually, that this individual, the plaintiff, may have a difficult time having that claim survive based on solely what we see in this complaint. Of course, then you go into discovery, but if I was in the defense camp, I would certainly be mulling over a motion to dismiss based on the sufficiency of that complaint, and whether it really makes out a allegation, proximate cause of harm leading back to Will Smith individually. Now, the corporation's another thing, if he's going to be able to allege retaliatory firing, but I expect that they're going to come in with their defense, and we really don't know what the defense standpoint is at this point from a firing standpoint or retaliation standpoint. And I'm sure they're going to say, listen, there was other reasons to terminate this individual, and it was not pretextual.
If he can prove, that he goes into his room and there's a note there and it's got all that stuff there and he didn't do it and it wasn't like somebody he knew was in there and he just walks in, if he can prove that, if he's got the note, if he has surveillance footage, if he has reports that to hotel security and police, if he can prove that aspect of the case, how much does that change everything?
So if he's able to prove that, and again, you can't be speculative in any of this, right? You have to really have concrete evidence and then link it back to some sort of theory of liability, Jesse, against these defendants. If he's able to show that, I still have that question, right? And again, I don't mean to be piling on the plaintiff here. I'm just analyzing this from what I see in the complaint there. I still think that there's going to be a difficult time tagging the defendants with any sort of liability because of what happened allegedly in the hotel room with the note and the items being left there and the suggested sort of comments in that note. But did the defendants know or should have known that something like this would happen? Did they have a duty somehow to safeguard that hotel room? And is there any connection whatsoever? Let's say an individual went into the hotel room and did that. Is there any connection whatsoever between that individual and the defendants named in this case? Maybe they're going to be able to prove that and bring out evidence. But from the complaint, I still feel like those dots, there's a line that needs to be connected that's not there.
Is it illegal for him to be fired because he reported this? Is it illegal? Because they can make the argument, yeah, we went with somebody else. I mean, what he seems to be relying on is the fact that they didn't, they hired another violinist, according to him. And I wonder, if he can really show that I was fired. I mean, the timing of this, guys, I'm fired right after I report this. You put two and two together. Talk to me about that.
Sure. If he is able to prove, right, that there was a retaliatory termination, that he went forward with these allegations, that he said that he felt unsafe, that he felt that there was some sort of sexual harassment that was in existence here, and that complaint was the basis of his termination. If he's able to connect those dots and lead it back to the defendants, then certainly he may have a case for retaliation, right? And when you look at this complaint and when you interviewed the attorney, right, he was actually suggesting that it's not a sexual harassment claim per se against Will Smith, right? And that's important to note, right? It's really a retaliatory firing case at the heart, the meat and potatoes of this case. And if he's able to show that there was some sort of retaliation for him speaking out about this, then he may have a case, an arguable case against the defendants. But I am sure that there's going to be another side to this story, and we're going to perhaps wait to see the motions that are being filed or may be filed in response to this complaint, or certainly during discovery if it passes the pleading stage.
I want to go back to something I mentioned at the top of the show. We looked through the court documents. I could be wrong, but it appears there's proof of service filings with respect to the management company that's been named as a defendant. We couldn't necessarily see it with respect to Will Smith. Would that mean that he hasn't been served with the complaint? And is that unusual if that's the case?
So, Jesse, what I would, just based on what you're telling me now, I would imagine, and we have a comment, right? We have a statement from his attorney that his attorney accepted service on behalf of Will Smith of the complaint. And that way there's no fanfare with some, a process server if they can't get to Will Smith's house because of gates or he's not there, that there's a process server waiting in ambush for Will Smith at some public event to serve him with that complaint and papers, which of course is very, dramatic. And typically when you have a public figure as a client, a celebrity, and at some point they're going to be able to serve this your client with a complaint, you'll reach out to the other side. You'll say, listen, I'll accept service on behalf of my client. We don't have to have any sort of public service, or any issue, or you don't have to ambush him on a red carpet with the complaint. I'll accept service, and let's talk about a reasonable time to respond to this complaint. So I would imagine that's what's happened here. They've served the corporate entity, but Will Smith, his attorney, most likely, again, I'm speculating, but most likely reached out to the plaintiff's attorneys. I'll take service. It's time to respond.
If this progresses, so if it survives a motion to dismiss, it goes forward. If this is based on these allegations, if Will Smith were to settle, would people view that as an admission of guilt?
That's really tricky, Jesse. When you have these sort of cases, with someone who is a public figure, a celebrity, someone who is in the public eye. When you settle a case, if it's a decision to settle the case, sometimes the public will look at that as some sort of admission of liability. Some people who don't understand the difference between the civil and criminal stuff will say, oh, he's guilty. He must be guilty. He settled the case. But Jesse, that's not always the case, right? You know, there's sometimes a business decision being made on a defendant's side saying, am I going to go through the expense, time, and arduous process of trying this case against this individual? Or am I going to say, listen, I just want this, I deny the claim. I think the claim is BS, and I just want to move on with my life and my business, all right? In those circumstances, there's sometimes behind the closed doors, attorneys are talking, and a settlement is had. Sometimes there's not even money exchanged in these settlements, and there are statements that are put out there. But you can't just assume always that the person who is settling the case is automatically at fault or admitting wrongdoing, because sometimes, especially with these celebrities and public figures, they'd rather not have the scrutiny of litigation and discovery into not just the claims that this person is making, but even potentially in other areas of their life. And they'll rather just resolve the case and move on.
Imran, I'm sorry. Let's see where this goes. Love to continue the conversation as this case potentially progresses, but really appreciate you taking the time. Don't be a stranger. You're so busy. You never come on Sidebar anymore. I hate it. It's not nice. It's not nice. You forget all about us, Imran.
Let me know. I'm always going to be make time for you, man.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us, by the way, on NBC's Peacock. We got Sidebar episodes there. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, you can follow my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live. I'll see you next time, everybody.
All right, guys, thank you very much for coming today. I have called you for a very special thing. We have an event day after tomorrow, and Khushi, you will make the necessary arrangements. Khushi.
Yeah, sure, sir.
You seem a bit off today.
Everything is good, sir. Don't worry, I will do.
All right, I am counting on you. All the very best.
ਕੱਲ ਰਾਤੀ ਰੋਈਆਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਰੋਇਆ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਚ ਲੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਚ ਅੜੇ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਖਰੇ ਦੇ ਦਿਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਤੇ ਆਵੇ ਨਾ 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 ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੱਚ ਸੱਚ ਦੱਸੀ ਵੇ ਇੱਕ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਗੱਲ ਵੇ ਤੂੰ ਦਿਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖੀ ਵੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਵੇ ਤੇਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਵੇ ਸੁਣ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੁਣ ਲੈ ਯਾਰ ਵੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਲੜਦਾ ਏ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਸੜਦਾ ਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਹੋਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਲਾਣੇ ਲਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਤੇ ਆਵੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੇਰੀ ਦੂਰੀ ਤੇ ਮਜਬੂਰੀ ਦਿਲ ਮੇਰਾ ਏ ਸਹਿੰਦਾ ਏ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਨਾ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਮਨਾਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਰੁੱਸਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਸਿਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਤੂੰ ਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਵੇ
हे गाइस, तो अभी आपने हमारा दुनिया सॉन्ग देखा, सो प्लीज कमेंट करके बताना कि आपको सॉन्ग कैसा लगा।
एंड हाँ, वीडियो को लाइक करना, जाने से पहले रिपल म्यूजिक स्टूडियोज के चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लेना। थैंक यू, बाय बाय एवरीवन।